Would you like to achieve financial freedom? Are you ready to dive into the lucrative world of buy-to-let property investment? If you've been searching for a straightforward, no-nonsense guide to kickstart your journey in property, then look no further. I've been investing myself for almost 5 years now and teaching people like you how to become successful property investors for the last 3 years. In this video, I'm going to answer as many of the frequently asked questions I get about buy-to-let property. So listen carefully, we're going to go quick, so take lots of notes. First of all, when you invest in buy-to-let property, you have to put down a deposit, typically a 25% deposit, and then you get a 75% buy-to-let mortgage from the bank. So first, we have to think, where am I going to get the money for the deposit? Sometimes it might be inheritance, it might be redundancy, it might be savings, it might be money from a divorce. But the way most people buy investment properties is by releasing equity from either their home or maybe an inherited property. So think about your deposit. Now, let's talk about buy-to-let mortgages. So, unlike your own home mortgage, which is very much based on your income, a buy-to-let mortgage is based on the rental income from the property. Some lenders want to see that you have some sort of income, but your income is not as important as what the property actually generates for you. And there are lots of different lenders out there. Some want some experience, some are very happy to lend to people who are completely new to property investing. So don't worry about that. I recommend what you do is you go to a mortgage broker who's got experience in buy-to-let property, and ideally they've got access to the whole market. Now, you can find a good broker at networking events or look online, ask for recommendations, check people's reviews. Now, when you take out a buy-to-let mortgage, one thing that people worry about is obviously having to pay interest on the money that you borrow from the bank. What will happen is, when you take out the mortgage, you can either fix the interest rate for maybe 2 or 5 years, or you can have what's called a variable rate, which goes up and down, generally in line with the Bank of England base rate. Now, as I film this video, the base rate is 5.25%. That's relatively high compared to the last decade, where the Bank of England base rate was as low as 0.5%, but actually it's in line with rates before 2007 and the last financial crisis. So what that means is, I like to use a figure of around 6% when working out how much I'm going to have to pay on my mortgage. That's pretty accurate, and it's worked very well for the last 3 years I've been teaching other investors. Now, a very important thing you need to understand when you get a buy-to-let mortgage is generally you want to have an interest-only mortgage. On your own home, you might have had a repayment mortgage because you need to pay it down by a certain age. But a buy-to-let mortgage, actually, you never have to pay that back. So an interest-only mortgage is what we want to do. Now, in 20 years' time, when the bank does want their money back, the value of the property would have doubled and probably doubled again. So you can either sell the asset to pay it back, or you can just go and refinance with another mortgage company. So that's a little bit about mortgages. Now let's move on to the next topic I want to talk about. As well as the interest you pay on the mortgage, there's going to be other costs to buying and holding property. So let's talk about that a little bit. So first of all, when you first buy an investment property, we have to pay a tax as an investor called stamp duty. Now, the amount of stamp duty you pay varies depending on the value of the property. Some cheaper properties, there's no stamp duty at all. Then the more expensive properties, you have to pay a higher percentage of stamp duty. But as an investor, buying a property that's not our own home, if we're based in England, we have to pay an extra 3% stamp duty. If you're based in Wales, then it's 4%. If you're an international investor, it's an extra 5% based on the value of the property. As well as stamp duty, we're going to have the cost of actually buying the property. We need a solicitor to do the residential conveyancing for us, and that might be typically around £1,500 to get done properly. We're also going to need to arrange the mortgage. We might be paying a fee to the mortgage broker, survey costs, that might be £500 to £1,000 as well. So you've got to factor these costs into account. Then, when you get the property, sometimes they're ready to be rented out and you don't need to do too much. I like to buy properties where I need to do a little bit of work to them. If you buy a brand new property, you're going to pay a higher price than if you buy an older property that needs some work doing to it. You probably don't want to take on a massive renovation project for your first deal. Maybe literally a lick of paint, cleaning the carpets, tidying up and getting it ready to rent. That's going to be much better. Now once you've bought the property, there are some other costs that you're going to incur as the landlord. You've got your mortgage interest you're going to pay, which is the biggest cost, but also you have to make sure you insure the property. You have to insure the building, you have to insure the contents, and as a landlord, we're going to have what's called public liability insurance in case someone has an accident in the property and they try to sue you. You want to make sure you're covered for that. So buy-to-let landlord insurance is very, very important. You're also going to have some maintenance costs. Now depending if it's a new property that's been recently renovated, the costs are going to be very low. If it's an older property, you're going to have more maintenance. And also, unless you're managing it yourself, you're going to have management costs. This means getting a letting agent to manage the property for you. Now this does vary, but typically a letting agent might charge you 10 or even 12% of the rental income. So you only pay that once they find a tenant for you and they manage the property. They look after it, they do the regular inspections, they collect the rent, all those kind of things that you're doing. They arrange the maintenance for you. But what it means is it frees up your time to go and find more property investments. You make more money finding and buying properties rather than managing your existing ones. You can absolutely manage a few properties yourself, very much part-time, as long as you're local to the property. But ultimately, if you're investing in property because you want not just financial but also time freedom, you don't want to be tied to managing the property. So I want to make sure when I buy a property, I can cover all of these expenses. And what I do is I work out what all of those expenses are, and the whole idea is the rent that I charge should be more than all of the expenses. Then I make a little bit of profit on top. And I like to see properties as cash machines. The idea at the end of each month is we make a profit on every single property that we own. If you don't make cash flow, if you don't make profit, personally, I don't think it's a good investment. So every property you buy should not only pay for itself, but also put money into your pocket. And then you also get to benefit from the long-term capital growth. So different types of properties generate different types of profit. Most people start investing with what's called a single let property. It might be a house or an apartment that's meant for a young couple, a family, or an individual. And generally, they don't generate lots of profit. But if you just did single let properties, you'd need quite a few of them to replace your income. However, there are more advanced strategies such as houses of multiple occupation, HMOs, or serviced accommodations, where you rent out the property on a short to medium term basis. And these more advanced strategies should be making you at least £1,000 per month in profit. So for most people, 3 to 5 of those properties could be enough to replace your income. So the next thing you need to understand is where you're going to invest. For most people, starting to look where they either live or work is a really good idea, because you're going to have a natural understanding of which are the good areas and which are the not so good areas. Now, an important distinction here, be careful not to judge an area thinking, well, I don't know if I would live there. It doesn't matter if you would live there or not. It's all about your target tenant. Would they live there? Would they want to live in that particular area, in that type of property? Obviously, you can do some research online. You can go and speak to local letting agents and understand what the rental demand is like in that area. So speak to local letting agents, get an idea from them, and also go to networking events where you can meet other like-minded people who are already investing in property. You can learn a lot from those people just by asking them questions about their experience. Okay, so now I've answered some of the frequently asked questions regarding mortgages, deposits, management, and where to invest. Let's talk about how you actually go about finding these property deals and what's the buying process. So obviously, you can go to your local estate agents, or you can go online into some of the main portals like Zoopla or Rightmove, and there are lots of properties listed there. One of the problems many investors have is they spend hours and hours scrolling through lots of properties, and they come off Zoopla just frustrated that they actually haven't found anything. There's some software called Property Filter, which will save you hours and hours of work and find you the best property deals in your investment area. So look out for that. The other thing you can do is go to property auctions. That's where people bring properties they want to sell quickly together. You can sometimes find some deals in auctions, but what you've got to be aware of is you're competing with other people in the room, and sometimes people take properties that have a problem and they dump them in the auction, hoping someone who doesn't really know what they're doing buys that property and ends up with not such a good deal. So although you can find some good properties in auction, I don't think it's the best place for you to start until you have some property investing experience. The other thing you can do that most investors are not aware of is you can actually go and find properties that are off market. These are the ones that are not listed with estate agents. Maybe it's a retiring landlord who's thinking about selling, but they haven't actually listed the property yet. And there are certain ways you can find these people and potentially get deals that no one else is looking at, which means you don't have any competition, and generally you get a much better price. So once you found a property you want to buy, you obviously make an offer. Once that offer is accepted, you will then instruct your solicitor and also your mortgage broker. The first thing you need to do is secure the mortgage. So you speak to the broker, they'll find the most appropriate mortgage for you, and they will instruct a RICS surveyor. It's called a Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. They'll go out on behalf of the bank to check the value of the property and also to check the rental income, because remember, as I said earlier in the video, it's not so much about your income, it's more about the income generated for the property from the tenants. So that's what's going to pay the mortgage and other costs. Assuming the valuation and the survey come in fine, you'll get the offer from your mortgage company. Then your solicitor will do some checks. They'll check the title, they'll check with the local council, do some searches, you'll have to pay for that, and then once everything is fine, you'll get to the point of exchanging contracts. When you exchange contracts, that's when you put down your deposit, which will typically be around 10% of the purchase price. And then also, that's when you're committed. Once you've exchanged contracts, you have to buy, and the seller has to sell to you. Neither party can pull out. Then, normally a week later, the solicitors have a chance to pull down the money from the mortgage company. You put in the rest of your money, and then you purchase the property. And once it becomes yours, then obviously you need to insure that property. You need to get it let out as quickly as possible, and you either need to manage it yourself. As I said, you can manage quite a few easily if they're close to you, or you get a letting agent to do it for you, and then you can move on to your next investment property. So that, in a nutshell, is how you invest in buy-to-let property. If you've made it to the end of this video, then that means that you're serious about property investing. And as a token of my appreciation for you watching the video, in the description below, I've attached a free buy-to-let course, which will teach you step by step, in more detail, how to buy your first buy-to-let property. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.